Hello everybody and welcome to Mother Rabbit's Kitchen. Today we are making dinner rolls from freshly milled flour, and you would never know these are 100% whole wheat because they are so soft and fluffy and buttery and absolutely delicious. So stick around and I'm going to walk you through the whole thing. We're going to start by getting our mixing bowl on our scale, setting the scale to 0, and then filling it up with 1,100 grams of hard white wheat. You could also use hard red wheat if you like that more whole wheaty kind of flavor. So you know me, I always go a tiny bit over the measurement. Well, not that much over. I'm going to take a little bit back. But yeah, I just want something just a little bit over 1,100, somewhere between 1,100 and 1,110, just to account for any of that flyaway flour that disappears during the milling process, because I never want to end up using less flour than the recipe calls for. So I'm just pouring that all in my mill, turning it on, and while that's milling, I'm going to measure all of my other ingredients. I'm going to start by warming some milk in the microwave. Now I want a total of 800 grams of milk and eggs. So I just put about 2 cups, maybe a little bit over, whatever my 2-cup measuring cup will handle. And I put that milk in the microwave for about 1 minute and 30 seconds while I crack 3 eggs into the bowl. Now eggs can be different weights. So what I do is I always use 3 eggs and then I fill the rest up with the milk to reach 800 grams. So that is about what I'm getting out of the microwave right now. And when I pour that in, I'm going to see if I need to add a little bit extra. So let's see. That's why I didn't weigh out my milk when I was putting it in the microwave, because I know I'm going to need at least this much. And whatever extra I need, I will just grab from the fridge and it won't really change the temperature too much. So let's see here. I ended up with just under 800, so I just grabbed the gallon from the fridge and just filled in the rest, but it's still going to be nice and warm, and that's totally fine if you go over a tiny bit over 800. And then I'm going to put in about 14 grams of active yeast, and then 26 grams of salt. I love that Redmond real salt. And then we're going to squeeze in 70 grams of honey. Then we're going to add 1 stick of butter. So I just chopped this up into chunks, put it in the microwave for 30 seconds. And I don't need my scale anymore at this point because I just use 1 stick. I don't measure it out in grams. And I just pour that in, and then I get out my hard white wheat that is now ground into that beautiful warm flour. And I put that right on top, getting all of the flour from the bucket and placing it onto my stand mixer. Put it nice and secure, get my dough hook fastened there, lift up the bowl, and then set it to level 2 for about 14 minutes. You may notice as you are kneading, about halfway into the kneading process, because there are eggs in this dough, sometimes the dough can get a little bit sticky on the sides, so you can just go in with that dough scraper or a rubber spatula and just dig down there and scrape down the sides. And sometimes I'll just pop it on for a half a second to move the dough hook onto the other side so I can scrape down the other side of the bowl and have room to do so. And then I just let it finish kneading, and it comes together really nicely. Right now I'm doing the window pane test. And again, this is a more enriched dough than a normal bread dough. So you should be able to stretch it pretty nicely without it ripping, and you should be able to see the light through it, but it might not be as strong as a regular bread dough. So I'm just taking my dough scraper and pulling it up from the sides just to get it into a nice uniform ball. And then I'll do the same thing with my fingers. And you don't have to go too crazy for this process, but I just like to shape it into a nice ball. You can see how soft it is. It's a very good feeling dough, and it's very easy to work with. And yeah, I just kind of pinch it closed, and then I get out my little olive oil here. You can use avocado oil if you'd like. And I just put a little bit on the side, and then I get in there with my fingers and just try to go in, scrape it up. And I'm trying to coat the entire ball of dough with some of the oil. And Once I get underneath there, I'll flip it around and do the same thing on the other side, because you want it coated on the side that's touching the bowl, and you also want it coated on the top side too, because when you put the plastic wrap on and let it sit, the dough is going to come to the top of the plastic wrap and you don't want it to stick. So I have let it sit out for about an hour to let it double in size, as you can see. So I have a sheet pan out with a piece of parchment paper. I have my bench scraper that is going to cut the dough into pieces, and I have my scale. So this dough, I actually weighed it out and then divided it by 24, and you're going to want to measure out little dough balls that are going to be about 88 grams each. Now, as you could see in the beginning of the video, the dinner rolls are pretty substantial in size. I like that because I like a big fluffy dinner roll. But if you are serving more guests, like a party, or you just want smaller dinner rolls, you can divide it into 35 rolls, and those would be 60 grams each. So I'm just cutting the dough in half, and then in half again, and then in half again, and then eventually I cut each of those pieces into thirds to get a total of 24 pieces, and I'm cutting them as evenly as I can just by the naked eye, but then I am going to use my scale to weigh them out to make sure they're as close to 88 grams as possible, but don't go crazy. It doesn't have to be 88 grams exactly, basically anywhere between 85 and 90, and then it'll kind of even out. If one's a little less than 88 and one's a little over 88, that'll balance out. And you can see I am pulling pieces of dough from rolls that I can tell are already a little bit bigger to fill in the gaps for the rolls or the pieces that are a little bit smaller. And this whole process just takes a few minutes, but you don't have to go too crazy with it. Technically, you don't really need to measure these out. If you just want to cut them into 24 pieces and just go from there, you can totally do that. I was serving these to guests, so I wanted to make them look as uniform as possible, and it also makes for even cooking as well. So you just kind of go through the process and put your finished weighed out rolls in a place where you know you've already done them. And then once you get everything weighed out, you can start to form them into the rolls, which I'm going to show you right now. We don't need that scale anymore. So you just take one of the pieces and start pulling the dough around in the same direction so that the seam is on the bottom, and then you put that seam on the bottom of your work surface and you just roll it around in your hand just to really tighten that seam, and then you put it seam side down on the parchment paper. Now if you're doing 24 rolls, you're going to have them laid out in a 6x4 formation, like 6 rolls by 4 rolls. If you're going 35 rolls, you would be laying them out 7x5. So you can see that it just kind of fills up the tray perfectly, and they're going to expand, and when they cook, they kind of stick together in that almost like Hawaiian sweet roll looking thing, which just makes them even softer on the sides. This is a little bit more of an up close and personal look to forming the rolls. This is a really fun and kind of therapeutic process. And it's really fun for the kids to do as well if they want to kind of get their hands in on the process and help make dinner. So we're almost done forming the rolls, just a few left to do. And then these rolls, we are going to spray the tops with a little olive oil or avocado oil spray, and then go ahead and cover it with plastic wrap, and then you're going to let them rise for anywhere between like a half hour and an hour. I usually go for about a half hour, but again, I was cooking for guests, so I had a bunch of things going on in the kitchen, and I didn't have a lot of oven space, so I did let these rolls sit out for probably a good hour, and they still came out perfect. So now I have this tiny baby egg here. You'll notice how small it is when I compare it with a regular size egg. And I just found this tiny baby egg to be the perfect size to make an egg wash, because when I use a regular size egg, I have egg wash left over and it drives me nuts if I waste that. So I use this little baby egg with a little bit of water and whisk it up really, really well. Take your plastic wrap off and a brush, and very gently brush the egg wash on the tops. Don't press down too hard. You don't want to deflate the dough at all. And you're just going to give them a nice even coating. And this is going to make them so golden brown and shiny and delicious looking when they come out of the oven. I'm going to put these rolls in a 350-degree oven for about 25 minutes. You want the tops to be nice and golden brown, and you also want to poke your finger on the sides a little bit to make sure they are cooked through. You just want to make sure that when you poke them on the sides, they are resisting and feel nice and cooked through, and they don't feel mushy at all. Now look how beautiful these turned out. They were such a crowd pleaser, and they are so simple to make. And we had leftovers of these. We used them for chicken salad sandwiches and just buttered rolls. Oh my gosh, so good. You can put jam on them. You can use them for burger sliders, sandwiches, anything your heart desires. Thank you so much for watching today. I hope you make them. I hope you enjoy them, and I will see you next time.